for the crowd. Thanks so much for Uvema and Patrick, Aurélie, and Dimitri for the invite. Um, I will, as Dimitri explained, I will discuss today some findings or make some some kind of an expose based on research that I've conducted in Finland and in the Netherlands in Amsterdam um, on different sort of experimental cycling initiatives for children and young people. I'm mainly talking about social initiatives. Yeah, actually in my current project, I'm studying also street experiments, so infrastructural experimentation. But yeah, what I'm going to talk about today, hopefully, I would, in my mind at least, applies to both of them. So really looking forward to the discussion at the end. Um, Perhaps as a note, I want to also mention that that in the beginning of my presentation, I will mainly be talking about the research and sort of the conceptual background a little bit because yeah, I think it's crucial to back up with this discussion, like methodological and conceptual insights. My claims about why we need this new kind of or new ways of governing children and young people's mobility, what I term community cycling governance. So starting off with more abstract ideas and moving towards more practical ideas, and I hope to make some uh, sort of implications and recommendations at the end. So those of you who are more inclined towards practicing than or the practices of hands-on cycling promotion should be please bear with me during the more methodological and conceptual insight. So I will start with research approaches, research context, then discuss these rationalities, representations, and mechanisms of change, like these three things, what I mean by them, and then focusing on these terms or concepts of velonomy, which obviously I think the French-speaking crowd is might be largely familiar with. So children and young people's autonomy through engagement uses of the bicycle. And then secondly, on the mechanism of mobility commoning, which is commoning is obviously is a large strand of research in urban studies and what is meant by mobility commoning and how that can be sort of teased out in cycling policy and cycling governance for children and young people. Those are the two key sort of mechanisms that I claim that cycling governance should touch upon. And then in the end, I will discuss this notion of community cycling governance and how it connects to those ideas that I developed before. So I found this nice old yeah, it's apparently it's the Roadmaster bikes ad, which for me reflects the issues that I'm going to discuss today. So community cycling governance, obviously there's a whole community, and we need some social infrastructures for children and young people to be able to pedal, to be able to cycle. Those people on the background, I mean, they are crucial. And I'm also going to talk about parenting today a little bit and really actually yeah, try to also make a small homage to Clément Rivière, who was talking in the previous session, and connect my ideas to his a little bit. But yeah, on the level of rationalities and sort of representations, I think the boy in the for in the center of the picture, looking proudly on his flashy Roadmaster bike with his school books on the rear carrier, represents me like sort of the, let's say, the aspects or the sort of the representation of a cycling child that I want to problematize with my research. So this is perhaps the image that that many people working in health promotion, sustainability transitions, transport transitions would like to see, but I would argue that the reality is much more messy, and actually if we try to sort of produce these kind of ideal cycling citizens that this guy here for me represents, then we actually might be missing the target when we try to promote children and young people cycling. So of course there's a lot of research and readings on why children are currently excluded from cycling and what sort of governance processes are not supporting children and young people cycling. And yeah, I would like to sort of skip that part, even though it's very crucial. And Clément Rivière in the previous session was really great, had great insights why children's autonomous mobility is suppressed. But I just want to put that in the beginning, that I'm not going to talk about those mechanisms that that the current cycling governance operates on that exclude children, but how can we then change this? So this we take for granted. This is the starting point, and from there on, I started to develop my study. Briefly about the research approach. So yeah, I consider myself an action researcher. So working with the participants of the research rather than studying or conducting studying on them. So I do co-research, for example, meaning that we can research like co-create the whole research approach with the participants themselves. And because that's a crucial mechanism in my mind to promote change. And action research is obviously all about change. So understanding those social structures and mechanisms that inhibit change, and trying to promote those kind of mechanisms as velonomy and mobility commoning, that can promote change. So it's often depicted as a cyclical, iterative process where we act. So it's very much about creating something, creating concrete actions, as I will explain. Observing those actions with the participants. This can be done through different means of data collection, obviously, workshops, interviews, surveys, focus groups, etc. Reflecting on it, then planning and acting again, etc., etc. So we start to understand the better and better those social mechanisms that prevent, in this case, children from cycling and that can promote their cycling. I understand. For me, action research has been in this study has been a form of experimentation, collaborative governance. Obviously, I will explain the actors that I was involved in a second. Also, as a form of social innovation, so thinking differently about what sort of social structures and for that matter in material structures we need to promote children and people cycling. And yeah, fourthly, it's about social learning. So really embedding like learning in those communities that we seek to change, and the learning process for me is the is key for to promote change. Um, so yeah, in sum, to do things differently and try out practices that are fundamentally different from the dominant ones. Then about the research context, the first case study where I observed this youth velonomy or childhood velonomy was a local cycling project in the city called Jyväskylä in Finland. We were co-creating with the local municipality, cycling advocacy groups, and a local sports club. And what I term these experimental initiatives involved bike buses. So perhaps many of you are familiar with that. It's a lot used in Europe by advocacy groups and activists. So yeah, meaning predefined group rights to from A to B can be organized in different ways. Of course, when we were working in the sports club environment, that was connected. Those bike buses were connected to the sports club activities. So and yeah, focusing on the sports club setting was also motivated by by this, that we have a lot of research that frame the trip to school as the most important mobility practice for children and young people. I'm not saying that it's not important, but we need to complicate, in my mind, our understanding of of children's mobilities from those journeys, that we focus on certain journeys to more complex understandings about their movement. And yeah, obviously sports clubs and other kinds of non-formal educational institutions are very much shaping children's lives. And I'll elaborate a little bit on that later on. So bike buses, bicycle repair activities, DIY infrastructures. I'm not going to focus so much on the content of the experiments themselves, but um, yeah, this video clip is just to provide you with. There's not supposed to be sound. I just wanted to offer you a small snippet from the setting. So yeah, obviously Finland is quite friendly for young people cycling. This is a city of 150,000 people, very much like a middle class, um, I would say even privileged a group of families and children. And the second case is from here in Amsterdam. It's a housing estate called Balmer or Balmermeer in southeast borough of the city. And there I was more concerned about how the Amsterdam cycling program was implemented in this settings of the city periphery. And here so the first case was more about a specific project, and this more about the whole how the cycling program aims to get actually children on bikes, especially in these kinds of neighborhoods that are, yeah, this is a lower class, very mixed ethnically, um, even stigmatized a little bit. So there's this neighborhood has suffered from a important degree of cultural stigma, labeled as the Dutch ghetto, or the yeah, a bad neighborhood in the, at least on the level of Netherlands, especially in 80s and 90s, but a very different sort of environment compared to the first case study. The experiments that we had were children's bicycle lessons that they conducted in schools, a bike kitchen. Those of you who don't know the concept, it's supposed to be an open access space for bicycle repair, and more broadly, sort of fostering and hosting um, local cycling cultures. And yeah, by offering a space and tools for bike repair, for group rides, etc. So sort of a community house for a bike culture, for a local biking culture. And then thirdly, there was a lot of experimentation. The municipality was very interested in working with these subcultural cycling practices that are quite prominent in this area, especially among the black populations, or black children, mainly from the Antillean and Surinamese backgrounds, who are quite who are a big group in this neighborhood. And yeah, for here, the video is just like another glimpse, especially to this cycling subculture that is quite prominent in this area. So yeah, again, I don't think that perhaps these images reflect the ideal cycling citizen that I talked about in the first instance. But in both cases, the actors involved, I was interested in how sort of the cycling policy flows down to the local level and how it's locally implemented. And action research is obviously creating this collaboration between sort of the cycling policy, but then local private governance networks. This meant, for example, in the Amsterdam case, some local cycling advocates or activists in the area. And in the Finnish case, of course, the sports club was a big sort of civic entity that we work with, but also local cycling advocates. And yeah, this is how I understand governance. So it's a networked practice among different actors. It's a messy process. And yeah, what makes this action research is obviously the bottom right. So we as researchers, or me as a researcher, was involved in creating these initiatives. And in the center, then there's the sort of what we created, so experimental cycling initiatives in collaboration of this among these actors. So governance. I'm not going to go into depth to the definitions because it's a slippery concept. But how I understand is that like cycling is made amenable to intervention in certain ways, and I'm interested in how and why children's like cycling or pedaling should be organized. What are those, what I term rationalities of cycling promotion? Is it that they need to be more healthy? Is it that we need to involve them in the sustainability transition, or what it is? So what kinds of rationalities and representations of children and cycling emerge? So as I was started off my talk with talking about the representation of an ideal cycling citizens. Are those correct? Do those representations on the level of cycling policy, do they correspond to the reality? Yeah, that's my research question, but I yeah, it's as research questions often are, it's a uh cumbersome sentence. So what kind of social mechanism do the cycling initiatives trigger to actualize rationalities and representation? So now I want to use then the next 5 minutes by just introducing briefly what I understand by rationalities, representations, and their connections to social mechanisms, uh, meaning velonomy and mobility commoning. So often I would say that this is the basic setting of research and practice when it comes to children and young people cycling promotion. So what works? What kind of programs are effective? What are the outcomes? But then we leave the sort of the the why question remains unanswered, and these are kind of approaches are sort of black boxing those mechanisms of change. Like why did something work in certain context? And that's why I also wanted to have two very different contexts to understand those sort of contextual differences on how mechanisms like velonomy and mobility commoning operate. Um, so the thing is that we cannot like this kind of social mechanism of velonomy, like how does cycling autonomy emerge really for children and young people? It's very difficult to measure and see objectively and directly. But for me, the way to analyze and understand them is to measure and analyze the rationalities and representations of cycling promotion. And that's also why I want to connect action with representation, with discourse. So I think this quote is very useful in this regard. Meaning that people not only act and organize in particular ways, but they also represent their ways of acting and organizing and produce imaginary projections of new ways or alternative ways of doing things. So there we already see that yeah, what we do and what we think we do and what we say we do are often messy, and the sort of the motivation for to measure these things to rationalities is here in the bullet points. So cycling policy and planning need to operate on certain spectrum of rationality. So for example, sustainability and physical activity are very much prominent in the field of cycling promotion. That's sort of the motivation from the policy perspective. But the problem is that, and I argue that these rationalities might not be the ones that have the power to change children's mobilities locally. So when children in certain community with certain backgrounds in certain spaces want to become mobile with the bike, they might not perceive themselves as physically active and sustainable citizens. Uh, they want different kind of content from their cycling practices, and it might be that their parents and their peers also want very different kinds of sort of or apply different kinds of rationalities to cycling and moving with the bike. So we often tend to understand cycling as an instrumental and functional transport, but children and the local communities tend to understand it also as playful activity, sensory pleasure. If you think about the guy doing the wheelies in the small clip that I had from the Amsterdam case, it's so much about sensory pleasure, even about countercultural, and even about um, resistance. Can be about freedom, exploration, escape, agency, mobile sociality, creating a space where you can be with your friends without adult control. So in the Finnish case, yeah, this is just to elaborate a bit on the understandings of velonomy. So, uh, yeah, how using and moving and repairing bikes and sort of all this material engagement and social activities around cycling can foster a comprehensive community culture. So velonomy, or the combination of velo and autonomy, often, you know, put the idea in people's heads that it's something very individual, because it's about individual autonomy, but actually it's about creating a community culture that values and give meanings to children's autonomy and autonomous cycling and autonomous mobility. And secondly, how the ability to manage the bicycle can promote a sense of autonomy, agency, empowerment, especially for underprivileged groups. So yeah, if we think about as I put it in the beginning, the starting point of the research should be that, or was for me, that children are currently excluded from the cycling sort of policy, cycling system, and some children even in that group, meaning like across class positions, ethnicity, gender, are even more marginalized, even in a place like Amsterdam, as I will discuss in a minute. But broadly, sort of the mechanism of velonomy is about broadening the imagination of what kinds of mobilities and activities are desirable and possible for given subjectivities, meaning in this case, obviously children and young people. Um, yeah, this is just to make the connection to what actually Clément Rivière was talking about. So what are those mechanisms countering children's autonomous mobility? Of course, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of research on it, a lot of policy implementation, a lot of planning around this. How urban risks are constructed. Yeah, the debate is obviously like what part of it is real, meaning like traffic danger, but also stranger danger that Rivière was talking about. But secondly, especially for focusing on the sports club context, I want to emphasize that childhood is increasingly institutionalized. That that people tend to think that good childhood is the kind of childhood that is spent in some sort of institutional activities, educational institutions like schools, after school lessons, arts, music, sports, etc., etc. So the sort of the valuation of of free roaming and hanging around of children and young people has been on a decline for decades. So these kind of popular discourses about good parenting, good care, good childhood make obviously a difference. So I just want to use this picture to yeah, spark some imagination on what kind of autonomy we think that is good autonomy, because this picture is from the 80s. I think it's from Newcastle, where children are really claiming the urban space and yeah, doing even risky things. So we we have very much internalized cultural ideas, what kind of autonomy is good autonomy, what is bad autonomy. But that is a key thing regulating children and young people's access to autonomous mobility and autonomous cycling more broadly. So this might be too much for many people, but what is enough, but not too much? And this is a constant struggle on the level of discourse. So if we think about it firstly from the parenting perspective, yeah, parents often think how to enrich children with necessary assets and dispositions, how to invest in children properly. What is our responsibility as parents? I really want to emphasize that, especially in the first case, I was focusing on the parent and the parenting discourse and how actually changing the parenting discourse means that there was velonomy was happening on the level of the local community. And so by measuring the change in representations of children and cycling and children as cyclists, I claim that we can say that something changed in the local community, and that change was like velonomy becoming sort of reality. So how to optimize the use of different affordances in the city. A lot of this stuff was what Clément Rivière was talking about. And then the discussion is if it's with the car or if it's with the bicycle. And yeah, I'm just gonna briefly show you how that actually changed. If you're interested in that change, it's well documented in one of the papers I wrote on it. So the notion, what is the mobility? The community of parents changed their notion and children, parents and children, really changed their notion of mobility. So mobility was firstly defined as predefined journeys according to predefined schedules. But after these experimental cycling initiatives that we did for around 4 to 5 months, mobility was more of a spontaneous and reactive movement according to children's self-defined needs. So this is why I want to also to problematize the notion of journeys, that it was not anymore after the experiment the journey from your home to the sports clubs, but actually you could do stuff. Children were doing a lot of stuff in between and went straight from their home to friend's place, or and from there to their sports sessions, and afterwards could hang out, go there. I have a lot of stories about buying ice cream, about going to the forest, about getting lost and then finding your way, etc., etc. So the movement, actually the mode of transport, the movement from parents chauffeuring children and and moving to or changing to children being autonomous with the bike, is not only a change of mode, of transport mode. It's actually a change of the patterns, overall patterns of mobility, and change of journeys. So yeah, there's all kinds of aspects how the representation of mobility change and how people think that they emerge. But yeah, I don't want you to start reading all of this. These issues also on here. I just want to emphasize again that on the level of governance, because this is about governance that I'm speaking today. on the level of governance, it was really interesting to see how during the project when we were doing this on the right side. Please don't bother reading all the activities that we did, but you need to just understand that on the right side there was always sort of co-research and then action based on that research with the community. So this is what I here you see what I mean by community cycling governance. So actually, the community itself was learning on the way. What is it? What is cycling about? Why do we like it? Why do we dislike it? Why do children like it? Why do we think it's good or bad, etc. So in the first instance, sort of the first loop of this cyclical action research process, it was very much about health promotion. Secondly, it was very much about transport, but only at the end of the process, all the actors actually started to understand cycling as a social space for children that empowered and them and in ways that we could have not imagined in the beginning, because we are so stuck with these predefined rationalities of health promotion, sustainability, and sort of understanding cycling as transport, or only as transport, only as movement from A to B. Um, then very, I'm gonna run through the second case a bit more briefly, but what I want to emphasize is that that on the level of a local project as in Jyväskylä, Finland, um, I was observing the mechanism of velonomy, but here when I was focusing more on the Amsterdam cycling program, meaning that there's a lot of projects under one umbrella. I would say that the aim of that program in this city is to make cycling available to all, and it's very apparent that they target these peripheral areas, perhaps more neglected areas, and especially the migrant background children in these areas, because they just cycle significantly less than their peers who live in more central areas of the city, who are more Dutch background, more white background, more higher class background, etc., etc. So commoning is a practice of collaborating and sharing to meet the everyday needs and achieve well-being of individual communities and environments. So it's about unlocking the resources, as I was telling you about the example of the bike kitchen, that we have open spaces where you can learn cycling culture, where you can fix your bike, where you can meet others, etc. So really about, you know, having a punctured tire in your bike can be a big thing in certain communities. And if you open up the resources for bike repair, for example, in a local bike kitchen, it can really you know, save a lot of cyclists from being, you know, dropped out because of that, because of lack of resources, lack of, you know, social resources, not knowing how to fix a bike, or lack of financial resources, because it obviously it often costs money if you go to the bike shop or try to get it repaired otherwise. So commoning is suggested to tackle the sort of deep-seated mobility justices that we have in the that we have created in the cycling systems, even in the cycling system of Amsterdam. And there's a whole analysis of this in my study, but today I don't have the time to run through it. Um, but the crucial takeaway here is that this is another mechanism that I argue, in addition to the velonomy, that I argue that is crucial, especially on the level of more broader programs where we are sort of managing or governing a set of projects that aim to promote children and young people cycling in different contexts. So what I want to um, leave you guys with before we move on to the discussion, I really hope to get some questions. What I mean by community cycling governance is that to return to this image of an idealized cycling citizen, is that the whole community behind this guy needs to give certain meaning to or find children's cycling meaningful in order to make it reality, and that's what velonomy is about. It means a change in the rationalities and representations of mobility. So when we start doing community cycling governance instead of, let's say, top-down cycling governance, we are actually creating those activities and projects, and I would say even infrastructures inside those communities when they become more meaningful to them, when they have more agency, how it emerges, and when it's sort of attuned to the social structures and cultural meanings that are relevant in this community. So in the Finnish case, a very sort of, let's say, sporty middle class native Finnish community around certain sports club activities. So these people, they recognize each other, like having similar struggles of raising children, children having similar aspirations about good life, good mobilities, good friendships, good social life, and when we start experimenting based on those like locally contingent understandings, I would say that our cycling promotion or cycling governance becomes more efficient. And on the other side, we have mobility commoning. That means to open up those resources that are needed for velonomy. So these might seem I would say that they should be in a constructive dialogue with one another, but they have, of course, some might have some controversies, because in velonomy we really start with the local understandings of mobility, and but with mobility commoning it's more of an open-ended process on the level of cycling programs. But yeah, finally, the argument is that cycling governance should be supplanted in the very communities that they seek to mobilize. Um, yeah, as I promised, so just very brief practical recommendations to end with. So to communities should be regarded as the locus of change to promote meaningful change through meaningful social structures. Cross-sectoral cooperation is one of the key findings for me. So actors outside of the transport and cycling sectors might sometimes be best equipped to understand the mechanisms of change. So the sports club, the art club, the yeah, often of course the school, for example, but other communities and social structures that we have in society that are already meaningful for the people. And on the level of more broader programs for cycling, in Amsterdam, my informants were not only from the transport sector, but also from the social services, health promotion, even the medical department, sports, people working with parks and open spaces, etc. So I would say that this is very key um, to embrace cross-sectoral cooperation. And finally, the meaning of experimentation. So we don't know what these sort of rationalities and representations are that are relevant to those communities before we start learning together with them. And this should be coupled with sort of a reflexive dialogue with the local actors. So not only experimenting, but also reflecting together, what did we learn in this process? Yeah, so I think I want to end with that, and yeah, please reach out if